All right, we're going live. I'm just pushing it to YouTube, so 1 second. Sandra will kick it off.
You give me a cue.
I see your shoulder, Christine.
Hey, everybody. My name is Sandra Roberts. I'm with Cade, Plump, Jack, and Odette, and I have the luxury of taking care of sales for the three folks with me today. Our three winemakers wanted to join me to talk about your shipments that you received in April. So we're going to talk about and taste 5 wines. You guys will have received some of these, so I hope you have them out. I hope you have your glasses out and one or two or three of these wines ready to try. So I'm going to start with the 2018 Plump Jack Chardonnay. And maybe we should have Aaron talk about it. Aaron Miller, first of all, what made you get into the winemaking business?
Hello, everybody. I'm Aaron Miller, the winemaker at Plump Jack Winery. I started in wine about 20 years ago now. My first harvest was right out of college, but like many students in college, I wasn't really a big wine drinker. At that time, I was at school to study neurobiology, physiology, behavior. I was planning on going to medical school. Did some internships in emergency rooms and quickly realized that it wasn't my cup of tea, so to speak. Wasn't really interested, and also I didn't really like too much blood, so went a different direction. But realized it quickly and was so grateful that I did those internships and realized what wasn't for me. But spent some time trying to figure out what to do. Having learned of so many options while I was in school, and fortunately for me, just moved closer to campus with some of my roommates and moved next door to somebody that was in the winemaking program at UC Davis, and that person introduced me to wine and got me interested in winemaking. And she actually got me my first job internship at Pine Ridge Winery, which is right across the street from Odette Estate, in 2000. So my first job out of college was working in a cellar, working in a lab, dragging hoses, doing pump overs, getting dirty. And it felt really good. And I really enjoyed the work, and could see a lot of what went into winemaking and the hard work and labor, but also a lot of the kind of more intellectual stuff, a lot of the lab work and a lot of the decision making that I was seeing from the winemaking team. So I decided to pursue that, went down to San Luis Obispo and worked down there, and then went back to UC Davis and got a master's degree in winemaking. And eventually, after working overseas for a little bit and back in Napa for a while, found my way at Plump Jack, and never looked back. It's been amazing here. So, but what we're having now is, hey, it was Blake. What we're having now is the Plump Jack Chardonnay 2018. This wine, I mean, I love all of our wines. I really enjoy this Chardonnay. I make this wine with an approach that really shows the varietal, shows the Chardonnay grape, and it shows the vineyard side as well. I do low oak. So when you taste this wine, you're not going to get a lot of oak on the nose and not too much on the palate either. The oak is only about 35% of the blend, 35% fermented and aged in oak barrels. And you really, from that, you just get a little bit of sweetness on the nose, sweetness on the palate, a little bit of vanilla and spice, and some nice palate weight, because we stir those barrels during and after fermentation, kick up the leaves and help to build some palate weight. And the rest of the wine is fermented in stainless steel tanks. And that really just allows the fruit to come through. It allows that nice fresh character to come through. And you can really, in this wine, pick out the 2 different vineyard sites that we have. One's up in St. Helena, where it's a little warmer in Napa Valley, about halfway up the valley. And in that vineyard site, we get more character that you would attribute to a warmer climate Chardonnay, a little bit more tropical notes, lychee, guava, banana, and a nice palate weight there too, nice richness, good texture. And then we have another vineyard down in Carneros, the far southern end of the valley. And where there it's a little cooler and you get more fresh fruit character, more apple, pear, some like pear skin, boss pear skin, and also some nice stone fruit, some apricot, peach, and really lively, bright, beautiful acid. And so you can really pick all that up in this wine. And I think that an important part of this is to do that low oak style. And we don't do any malolactic fermentation either. So we keep that really bright malic natural acid, that malic acid, and that really accentuates the fruit on the palate and also gives it a lot more length on the palate as well.
One of the things I always talk about when I'm on the road or hear about is people don't like wines with oak. But I think what people don't like is wines with too much oak. So using just a third barrel fermentation and 2/3 non-barrel fermentation, what do you think that does to the wine, to the texture, to the flavor?
Well, just adding a little bit of oak you do get some oak on the nose. It's very subtle though, and sometimes it's hard to even pick out unless you taste it against an unoaked Chardonnay. But it does give you this really subtle kind of undertone of spice and sweetness. Mm-hmm. And then on the palate, it gives you a little more richness, a little more texture as well, and also a little bit more structure because you're getting a little bit of tannin from the barrel. Mm-hmm. So you do get a little bit of tannin and a little bit of structure on the back of the palate as well.
I say all the time.
You're right. People don't mind oak in wine, but they don't want an overly oaked wine. And if you do it right, like I think we'll see in the next wine that we're trying, like you will see that you can put oak on wine and not overdo it if you use the right techniques and take the right approach.
I agree, 100%. I love the texture of this wine. It's got a creaminess. I say often it reminds me of a grilled scallop or sea bass. It's kind of bright and rich at the same time. Lovely balance.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it pairs really well with food like scallop, lobster, crab, fish, like an oily fish, like a cod. It has really nice acid that can cut the fat, but it also has a similar texture. It has that weightiness to it that really can stand up to those oily foods.
It's a great example of not summing Napa up as one thing. I think it's a great example of a Chardonnay that's not like the reputation that Napa has gotten of being kind of overdone, over-oaked, over everything. You take sites that are beautiful and pair them with the right things. Nice work, Aaron. As you know, this wine gets me in trouble from time to time.
Yes, it does.
So you mentioned that Davis was the very best school for winemaking.
I did not mention that.
Up for debate.
Which leads me to introduce everybody who hasn't met him yet. Jeff Owens. He's been with us forever, actually. Jeff was hired right out of college. He was the first graduating class from Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, and that's why there's this what would you call it? Feud. No, kidding. Respectful feud over who has the best winemaking program. But I love telling the story, Jeff, when you went to John Conover, one of our owners, to ask for a job in the cellar, how you told him you were top 3 in your class. And then later, when he asked a couple more questions after you were hired, found out that there were exactly 3 in your class. So we've never actually gotten
very honest and truthful. he just waited too long to ask the question.
Well, we sure are glad to have had you for so long. So Jeff, you started in our cellar at Plump Jack and then worked your way up to assistant winemaker at Cade and Plump Jack. And then when we opened our 3rd winery, Odette Estate, I used to say you got the bid, but I've revised my sentence to say you earned the bid to be winemaker at Odette. And I'm so damn proud of you. The second one that we're having, because we're lucky enough to have all 5 of the wines that were shipped in April, is the Odette Reserve Chard. And I think this one's really special too. Would you tell us first what got you into winemaking? And second, a little bit about this wine.
It would be my pleasure. So I was not seeking a medical profession like a lot of people, including Aaron. And I also do not like blood. I went to Cal Poly for horticulture. And that was my degree to start off, and always kind of liked the idea of having some kind of career outside as well. And I think winemaking is definitely a good mix now, being both inside and outside. But starting at Cal Poly, that was my original intention.
Was horticulture about golf, or was it about
I
something?
was going to take it to the golf level. So definitely interested in golf course maintenance, as I do love to golf. So I think whatever you do, you have to find a passion in life. And that was something that I was really interested in at the time. So that was my original intention. And then I actually ended up meeting a friend who was minoring in viticulture at Cal Poly. And I had absolutely no idea that anybody offered a minor or major with wine as a career in mind. So when I found that out, I was like, wow, it's really, really interesting. I decided to take a course the very next quarter, and I was hooked within the first 5 minutes. I had the most passionate, energetic professor. He was amazing. I just sat back and thought about how every vintage you're going to have a new challenge, how we constantly are learning and learning a lot, but then we come to find out how much we still don't know and how much we need to learn. So it always keeps you on your toes, and I like the challenge of that. That was probably the most intriguing thing. So during that time, it was also part of the boom on the Central Coast as well. And so there was a lot of opportunity to go out and see new things and taste new wines, be amongst friends. And so just a really great experience across the board. So I ended up aligning myself as the top three, and graduating in 2005, and then making my way up to Napa Valley. And that's
I bet Cal Poly and that professor is pretty proud of what you've accomplished.
Yes, unfortunately, he ended up passing away, so he didn't get to see everything. But he definitely was a big influence in my life.
Fantastic. And for you guys, you probably know, if you're a member of our wine club, the story when Jeff's first vintage came out. And it was his first vintage as a winemaker, our first vintage as Odette. And it was the first vintage under screw cap that scored 100 points. And that's just a legacy that no one can take away from you. And it's something you should be really proud of.
Definitely proud of it. It was a team effort, and we couldn't be more grateful and proud. And I would have never imagined that in a million years to come out of the gate. So pretty cool.
Really, we coming out of big cab houses. What inspired you to make a Chardonnay down at Odette?
I love Chardonnay. You know, I think Cabernet is king and Chardonnay is queen. And we wanted to make a style of Chardonnay that was a little bit different from what Aaron is making at Plump Jack. And we have been fortunate enough to have been offered some Old Shot Winty grapes from Lee Hudson down in Carneros from the Hudson Ranch.
What's Old Shot Winty grapes? So
Old Shot Winty, it's a clone of Chardonnay, a very special clone that's been around for some time, coming from Winty and Livermore. And it's what they call the chicks and hens clone. So if you look at these clusters, they have both small and large berries on the same cluster. And so it really adds to the overall complexity of the wine, where you get a lot of acid, minerality, freshness, fruit, depth, and structure. And so because of that complexity, we are able to 100% barrel ferment this wine. Mm-hmm. So a completely different style than Plump Jack, and very interesting.
Really interesting.
So 18 is my favorite vintage thus far. It is also the first time that we're ever going to be able to really have any to offer, which is also exciting. So not only have we been able to craft more, but I do think it's the highest quality.
Well, were you able to get a few more rows from Mr. Lee Hudson? Are we frozen?
Block. And then in 18, we picked up an adjacent block. So it's really close in proximity, but the soils are a little bit different. So this new block has sandier soils, So I think it adds another dimension to the overall blend, which makes it quite interesting. So a little bit more acid driven, a little bit more precision, a little bit more focus, whereas the original block is a little bit riper in nature, more tropical fruits, a little bit more lush and rich and dense. And so I think the combination of the two really creates a very nice balance.
Well, I feel really lucky. I think a lot of times, just being able to get those rows, that just speaks to the relationships that you and our owners have garnered with some of the best farmers in Napa Valley. And the fact that he would offer it to us, it's pretty lucky, don't you think?
It's pretty cool, yeah. And I love working with him. I just love the passion.
Yeah.
It's so neat to work with somebody who has a passion like his, and he's just so energetic and driven to grow the best Chardonnay grape. So it's a privilege to be able to work with him.
Does this relationship go back further than just farming?
It goes, well, yeah, there's another family member that was involved at one point.
Well,
Son Ed, who worked up with us at Cade. So that was kind of the first introduction.
you know, like anything, I think like any business, like any relationship, it's relationships, right? Where you get the first call saying, hey, we've got a few rows next to us, next to Consgard, you interested? You know, if we get the call first, it's exciting. And then I think allows us to expand our quality and opportunities, which is why for the first time ever, we'll have enough wine maybe to last longer than 30 days.
We don't drink it all first.
If we don't drink it all. Oh, we have a question
Question for Jeff.
for Jeff.
How would you compare the 2017 to the 2018 Chardonnay?
How did you, I don't know if you heard, but how would you compare 17 to 18 Chardonnay?
I did. So two completely different vintages. Where 17 had a much lighter crop. Actually, the total production for 17 was probably about a quarter of what we were able to craft in 2018. So lower yields, a much hotter year. Riper flavors, a lot more tropical notes coming through on the 17. So a little bit bigger, richer, denser, more weight overall, I would say. And the 18 has a little bit more focus and precision and freshness. And the oak is really, really well integrated in the 18, which is something that I love and that we're striving for. It's 100% barrel fermented, about 75% new. And I think if you were to taste this wine and not have a comparison, like say with stainless steel, but just try it on its own, I don't think you'd really get a huge sense of oak. And that's kind of the goal. I think the wine is big enough to be able to stand up to it and take that on and incorporate it. And that's kind of the goal, is to be able to complement that fruit.
One of the things I love about the 18 is you have this really richness of flavor and the nice vanilla from the oak, but it's not sticky or flabby. It has great acidity. Is that what you meant by those chicks and hens and the cool climate in which it's grown?
Yes, and so yeah, this part of the ranch too is really nice. It's off of Henry Road, and so it's one of the cooler parts of the overall ranch. And so because of that, it really retains a lot of the acid and the freshness.
This really bucks the trend too, where people have, Napa's gotten a reputation of having fat Chardonnay, that's kind of over the top. This is over the top in every single right way. It is delicious. And that zippy, zingy acidity is extraordinary.
Thank you. I'm enjoying it. Very happy with how it came out.
Delicious. Now, I watched a video and someone was asking about pairings with this. One of my favorite pairings is just a hamachi crudo with a little sea salt. I'm just going to throw it out there.
Do you deliver? I can do that right now.
I don't think you want me cooking it. But a great example of two really differently and distinct styles of Chardonnay that are both extraordinary. So I think it's another example of just not summing up Napa Valley as one thing in terms of what we can do, what we can produce. And the other thing I really admire about your work, both of you guys, is in these Chardonnays is honoring place, really making your winemaking choices based on where this wine is grown and how to lift it to its highest potential while honoring the farmers who grew it.
Agreed.
Nice
Yes,
work.
it all starts in the vineyard, for sure.
Yeah.
You have to have that terroir, and we want to showcase that sense of place.
So would you say that really inspires both of your, Aaron too, chime in, does that inspire your winemaking choices with these two shards?
Go ahead.
The location.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it does inspire that. It's more about trying to show both of these different locations and allow them to come through without dominating the wine and overshadowing it with oak. The clone that we have in St. Helena, clone 4 Chardonnay, is probably more easily masked with oak. It's a little bit more of a delicate clone. And so if you use too much oak on that clone versus a shot Wente, I think you would end up with just an oaky wine. And so while the clone has really nice character and really beautiful flavors, it's a little bit more delicate.
Cool. I love that. I think for a great winemaker, really to step back and let the fruit shine and let the place shine, that must be one of the hardest choices to make versus, imprinting yourself upon it, allowing place to shine. So I applaud that in both of your choices here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there's another one up in the top corner. I don't know if it's the top corner for everyone else. I feel a little bit like a small version of the Brady Bunch. Miss Danielle Serow, winemaker at Cade and Cade 13, same winery, 2 different places. And we're going to really taste some cool Cabernet here. The first one is I like to call it Baby Cade, but I think I made that name up. It's our Cade Napa Cabernet. Oh, thank you, Danielle. Danielle, though, before we talk about this wine, you have to tell them what inspired you to get into winemaking.
Well, I decided to go to UC Davis, the best school, by the way, in the country.
Ever.
Did you mute Jeff?
I would have to strongly disagree with that one. You know what? Some of your staff might be disappointed too, Danielle.
Oh, okay, all right. At that time when I was looking at schools, I thought I would do physical therapy, actually. And so I wanted to be close to Tahoe so I could ski. And my sister was going to UC Berkeley at the time. And I also wanted to be at the furthest UC school I could get to from my parents, which is kind of bad to say, but it's true. Anyway, so I went to Davis thinking I would do physical therapy. And my freshman year was flipping through the course catalog and saw that they had a class called Introduction to Wine. And it was taught by Carol Meredith, who has a winery up on Mount Veeder called Legier Meredith. And they do some spectacular Syrah. But anyway, I digress. I took that class as a freshman, just curious about wine, how to read a wine label, learning about all the different wine regions around the world. And we even got to taste a little bit of wine during the class. Of course, we had to spit. And I thought it was the best thing I could. Yes, we did spit, Sandra. But I just thought it was the best class ever. And I thought, why would I want to do physical therapy when I can make wine? So I changed my major and never looked back. So
There's a story you told that I really found intriguing. And was it in that very first class that they made you take the test, or was that after the first class?
No, this was later in our wine sensory class taught by Ann Noble. She was the one who developed the wine aroma wheel, if anybody knows of that. But anyway, the first day of that class, which was basically the class that teaches you how to taste and smell and describe wine. That first day, she said, okay, here's a little strip of paper. I want you to put it on your tongue and tell me what you taste. And for those people that when you put the paper on your tongue and you taste this really bitter, astringent flavor, that was meaning that you were a super taster. And 95% of the students in that class were super tasters. So we had all somehow gravitated towards a career in which super tasters can taste the, salty, sweet, bitter, umami astringent at lower levels than the rest of the population. So only about 5% of the population are considered super tasters.
I like to call that one of your superpowers.
One of my superpowers, absolutely. So yeah, so little did I know that I was a super taster, and I had found my way into this crazy world of making wine. So
Well, thank goodness for us. We're the lucky ones that you found your way. Tell us about this Cade Napa Cab. I thought you were up on Hell Mountain. What's a Napa Cab all about, Danielle?
yeah, well, we decided to make this wine because we had the opportunity to work with some fantastic growers on the valley floor of Napa Valley. And two, also to kind of showcase what we could do with Cabernet Sauvignon from another area of Napa Valley, to really kind of show you the difference between Howell Mountain and elevation, and what Cabernet tastes like from the Howell Mountain appellation versus valley floor, which this wine is mostly Calistoga fruit from Kennefic Ranch. But there's also a little bit from Oak Knoll, the Shea property. So really, when you go out and you taste fruit in the field, when you're tasting Cabernet Sauvignon and trying to decide when you want to pick it, there's a few things that I do. One, I sample it to analyze the sugar, the acid, and the pH, but also I'm tasting the fruit for ripeness of flavor. You want to taste strawberry, raspberry, blueberry, blackberry. You don't want to have any green characteristics, but also you can chew on the skins and the seeds, and you'll get a level of bitterness and astringency from the skins and seeds, which crazily enough is different for grapes grown on the valley floor versus grapes grown up on Howell Mountain. So having said that, valley floor fruit usually has a little bit softer tannin, a little bit more elegant structure to it. And that's what we're trying to portray in this wine. When you go up to Howell Mountain, when you chew on the skins and seeds of those berries, you really taste the tannin. You taste that bitterness right away. And it's very apparent that there's something different about grapes grown on valley floor versus up on Howell Mountain.
Well, that makes sense. Oh, we have a question.
So Larry West, it's a
Two-part question.
Yeah, he wants to compare vintages 13, 14, 15, and 16 for Cabernet and compare it from Howell Mountain to Valley Floor Plum Jack.
Okay. The question is comparing 13, 14, 15, and 16, and then comparing those vintages above and below the fog line, up at Cade and down on the valley floor. So what if each winemaker takes one vintage and talks and gives their opinion? Want to start with Jeff?
Sure, for 13?
13 and 14.
13 and 14, yeah. So 13 was a fantastic year. Both 12 and 13 back to back for Odette were absolutely amazing. 13 was a little bit of a warmer year and another year of drought, and it was a lower crop year as well. So what ended up happening was the cluster sizes were a little bit smaller, berry sizes were smaller, and so we had a lot of concentration and an abundance of tannin. So this was probably the craziest year as far as extractions that I saw anywhere, whether it be on a mountain site or valley floor. But we were pressing our red fermentations at 18 bricks, so anywhere from 12 to 18, but 18 is unheard of. But we had so much color and so much tannin just a couple of days in through our fermentations on skins that we just had to get it off.
So the way you're describing 13 to me sounds like what Danielle deals with almost every vintage up there. Would you say that's right, Danielle?
Yeah, except Jeff made a point of pressing at 18 bricks. We were probably pressing at 21. Pressing a day earlier because we were extracting so much tannin and color so quickly, especially in 13. Big, powerful wines in 13.
So for those of you guys in our club that don't know what that means, pressing early means a lot of times when you ferment, you ferment until dry, until all the sugars have been eaten by the yeast and turned into alcohol. But these guys are stopping that process a little early. It happens on Howell Mountain quite a bit, so that we don't make a wine that's too tannic to drink. Is that correct? Is that the way? Yeah.
Yes,
So
yep.
when you say pressing early, especially on the valley floor, that must be would have made for a huge wine in 13 had you not taken those steps.
They were already huge. Even draining and pressing that early was quite the opposite that we experienced in 14, where we had to work a lot harder to achieve the same level of extraction. So, it was probably 3, 4, in some cases 5 days longer on skins. So quite a bit of a difference.
So you're not making wine every year day in and day out, like recipe winemaking.
There is no recipe. Yeah, you have to take, that's the fun part about it, right? Every vintage is different. So we're trying to adapt. And
Aaron, how would you describe then 14 and 15?
Or 15 and 16?
Either.
So 15 was for us another year with really great concentration. It was as far as the climate goes and the weather that year, it was another drought year. It was a pretty warm year outside of May, June, when we had a little dip in the temperature and the weather, and that happens to be when we have bloom. And so the grape clusters, the flowers were in bloom, they're open, they're ready to pollinate, and then the temperature dropped pretty significantly down to below optimal conditions. And so we had really bad pollination. And so we had really low yields. We had a lot fewer flowers that developed into grapes. And so we had really low yields and really high concentration and really great quality. Our CFO was not happy, but I was very happy. The quality was outstanding. Another year where we weren't pressing as early as we were in 13, but we're pressing a little early. We had a lot of extraction. We had great character, great flavor, and the resulting wines had good structure, but it also had a lot of fruit. They were very forward. They were very giving wines. And so they were one of those wines where upon release, they were ready to drink, but they had all the elements that you need to age as well. 16 was another great year. And it was kind of a sleeper for me because initially I wasn't, just after harvest, I wasn't as into the wines. But it was a really even season, just mild temperatures, nice temperatures, and no real threatening events, no big heat spikes or early rains or anything like that. And we had decent yields. They weren't as bad as 15, but they weren't as big as something like 2012 where we had really high yields. And the quality initially, when after harvest, I was evaluating wines and I was thinking, yeah, they're good. They're not my best effort. But after the wines aged and developed and we did some blending, they just continued to grow and develop and get better and better and better and better. And now I think that they're probably the best wines that I've made. So it was just a really incredible vintage.
And then I think one thing we should talk about, especially when we're about to taste some 17s from Howell Mountain, is that was a very different experience for you guys on the valley floor in 17 versus what Danielle was doing up on the mountain. And I'll tell my experience when I came home that Friday from a work trip and the fires were raging in 17. I do what every good Southerner does, and I went and bought pizzas to deliver food. So I'll never forget having my mask on and my eyes were watery, and I was driving up valley with 20 pizzas in the back, and I dropped 5 off to you, Jeff, and it was scary. And then I went up to Plum Jack and I dropped 5 off to you, Aaron, and my eyes were watering, maybe from tears, maybe from smoke, and it was just it felt a little bit like Armageddon for me. And then I drove up to Cade to deliver 10 pizzas because Danielle has the biggest crew up there. And I remember breaking through what is normally the fog line. And in this instance, whatever held the fog in place held that smoke in place. And above that smoke line were blue skies. I'm getting tears in my eyes talking about it. Blue skies, it was breezy, and I could not believe my eyes. What an experience. The challenges that y'all had in 17 on the Valley floor is one of the reasons we're probably not talking a lot about it right now, too. We have so much less wine because we won't put our name on it if we can't make it amazing. So Jeff made significantly less Cabernet. Aaron made significantly less Cabernet. He made no Merlot, no Syrah, because it wasn't worthy of us or of you guys, our customers. And that may sound like a commercial, but I promise you it is. It's the way we go about things. So to that end, Danielle, you want to talk a little bit about this 17 Cade Reserve Cab?
Oh, yes.
I'm just going to start by wow. Wow.
Well, I mean, yeah, 17 was definitely challenging because of the fires. And there was a lot of, shall I say, I would say I was worried because Cade, we had not picked any of our estate fruit before the fires. And so there was a little bit of a concern about, do you pick because there's fires, or do you wait and pick when you think it's ready? And I decided to wait and wait for the flavors, because you're not going to make good wine out of unripe grapes. So it was a gamble, but I think it paid off, hopefully. In that we
I'm gonna go ahead and say yes. Yes.
Yes, I'll double down on that.
we made the wines that we wanted to make, what was happening around us. And the Cade Reserve is really a selection of the best of the best of the vintage. It's the best blocks, the best picks, what we think is the best wine we can possibly make from our estate vineyards. And I'm looking for much more dark fruits, black fruits, blackberry, boysenberry, black cherry. And I tend to use a little bit heavier toast barrels, medium plus to heavy toast barrels that bring in some of the coffee and chocolate and a little bit of sweetness in the mid palate. But then the wine just finishes with that Howell Mountain structure that hopefully is in balance. It's in check. It's not, too massive, but it's there for sure. And, we're just trying to showcase what we think is a great representation of Howell Mountain Cab, and that's what the reserve is. So, yeah, I'm pretty proud of it, especially since that vintage was very challenging and it was a lot of long hours and hard days. But the resulting wines are, I think, pretty stunning.
I'm gonna go with magical. Is the Cade Reserve the best blocks from both vineyards, or just from our initial vineyard, Cade?
No, from both vineyards. So in 2016, we bought another property up on Howell Mountain, just adjacent to Cade, which we are calling 13th Vineyard. It is 82 acres planted of Cabernet Sauvignon, Malbec, Petit Verdot, and a little bit of Sauvignon Blanc. And so we bought that in 2016. Half of the vineyard went to the previous owners. Half of it went, or I should say a quarter went to another winery that was buying the fruit. And we got a quarter of it for Cade. In 2017, we picked all of the fruit for Cade. So I had at my disposal another 82 acres of fantastic Cabernet Sauvignon and 10 different clones of Cabernet Sauvignon to pick from. So let me just say it's made a great addition to the Cade estate. Call it 13th Vineyard because that property was established in 1886. And it was the 13th bonded winery in California. It has a beautiful stone winery that was built as a gravity feed winery. So crushing on the top level, fermentation on the middle level, and then barrel storage on the lower level. So it's made a really great addition to, I should say, the amount of picks and blocks and fruit and that I get to choose from to make the best possible wine we can. So.
Now, I heard you talk earlier about the bricks at harvest and the ripeness, but you said something that I found interesting, that you tasted the grapes. And with a wine, with the additional vineyards, the additional 80 acres, so now you're running around over 100 acres tasting the grapes to determine when to pick. How many different picks do you make?
It's a good question. I think it's I'll have to look back at what I did last year, but I think it's probably about 50 different picks from the two properties.
So you're picking not blocks, not rows, but portions of rows within blocks to get the cluster when it's perfect.
Absolutely. Especially up on Hell Mountain, a block really doesn't mean anything. You can't look at the blocks that we have and go, it's all ripe all at the same time, because our vineyards are on mountains, and there's different changes in elevation. There's shading from the big pine trees that are surrounding the vineyard. There could be variations in the soils that the grapes are growing in, rockier up at the top of the block or at higher elevation, and more dense at the lower elevations. And so all of that comes into play. So when I look at a block, I don't think we have to pick it all. I think what is the ripest and the most delicious and the most exceptional part of this block, and I'm going to find that. And so the idea being to taste every, sorry, that's my son calling me. Hi, baby. Hi. Hi, baby. Yeah, I want to come see you. Okay. Sorry. He wants me to watch Paw Patrol. But I really approach it of walking every row, trying to taste every cluster, taste, every vine to determine, is this ready to pick? And then I'll mark out sections of the block, and it might be 1 ton on the east corner and 1 ton on the northwest corner that I'll combine together. And then 3 or 4 days later, I'll come back and grab the south section of the block, whatever it might be. But I think that's the level it's what I like to do. It's kind of the level that I want to be at in order to make an exceptional glass of wine.
I think that is extraordinary for 2 reasons, more than 2. One, the attention to detail to pick the perfect cluster to become the perfect wine to make this multifaceted expression of Hell Mountain. But not only that, also the financial commitment it takes from our ownership to allow you to make 50 different picks in our effort to lift place to its highest potential is also an extraordinary thing to be noted.
Absolutely. And I think Jeff and Aaron would say the same thing when I say that our ownership doesn't tell us how to make wine. They allow us to make the decision, every decision in regards to grapes to bottle. And that includes picking a block 5 or 6 times or doing 50 picks within one vineyard. The barrels that we purchase for the wines, which blocks, which blends we put together, all of that is our decision. And I never have a comment back from the ownership saying, you can't do that.
That's very incredible.
It's kind of like the dream job, really, when you have full control to be able to really bring out the best in the grapes and try to make, the best glass of wine you possibly can without restrictions.
It's really, people ask me a lot what our what the commonalities are and if you guys help each other make wine, and I say no, but the commonality is our objective, which is to lift our places to their highest potential. Jeff, I remember when we first started, you started kind of slacking after like the third vintage, going from 28 picks to 25 in your 32 acres.
I was slipping a little bit. I can't forget. Can't forget about those last 3.
I guess after the first couple of years, you had those 3 picks down.
That's right.
We have
To
a question.
consolidate for you.
This is for each of them. To each of the amazing winemakers, has there been a wine before Plum Jack Wines that really helped you define your style to your perspective of wine?
Did you guys hear that? Is there a wine that inspired you before your current jobs to define your style of winemaking? And each one of you. How about you go first, Aaron, since I haven't called on you lately.
Okay, so I'm gonna say, for me personally, no. I learned how to make wines in many different ways at different wineries, different varietals, from Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris, Chardonnay, Cabernet Sauvignon, Sauvignon Blanc, Merlot, Syrah, and I was never trying to necessarily emulate a certain wine or a certain style. I just wanted to do the best that I could, and everywhere that I went, I just picked up more knowledge, more experience. I learned from the winemakers, assistant winemakers, owners of each of those wineries, and just held on to as much knowledge as I could and gained as much experience as I could. And I just took all of that that experience to Plum Jack with me. And when I got to Plum Jack, I just wanted to work with those grapes and make the best possible wine that I can make from those grapes, using my past knowledge, past experience, and also gleaning some knowledge from our former winemaker at Plum Jack, Tony Biaggi. He gave me a lot of information as well about the vineyards and the winery itself. And so my goal really was just to make the best wine that I can. And there are wines that I really cherish and adore, and that I look up to as the best in their class, for Bordeaux varietals or Rhone varietals, or what have you. And I would love to kind of achieve that success, but I also have to understand that I am making wine on this piece of property, on this land, and I really need to respect the fruit that's on that land and make that wine, make it what it is.
Yeah, makes sense to me. What about you, Jeff? Have you been inspired by a certain wine?
Absolutely, definitely. And I would agree with Aaron. I think it's all about, making the best possible wine that you can, and every piece of land is a little bit different. So you have to respect that terroir and get the best out of that sense of place. So there isn't always like a direct wine that is going to correlate to what you're maybe try to, aspire to. But being the top dog in the district, not too far from us, and one of the best wines that I had when I first came into the industry was the 2001 Schaefer Hillside Select. And so they were kind of the producer to be at that time, and someone to look up to. And so I wanted to, definitely craft wines that were able to stand up to that level. And that was one of the best wines that I had from the sub-appellation at that time. So that was kind of probably my inspiration as far as, trying to get to that top level.
They have certainly built a legacy of great wines and great winemaking. Definitely. How about you, Danielle? Have you been inspired by any wine or winemaking technique?
I wouldn't necessarily say a specific wine, but I definitely learned a lot from traveling abroad and working in France and Australia, and just working with those winemakers that have a kind of a different philosophical approach to winemaking that I think I took pieces of into my own. And that when I worked in France, I worked in Alsace, and the winemaker there, was very much of the belief that the winemaker is not there to manipulate the grapes and turn it into something that it's never going to be. they've been doing it for hundreds of years, and they kind of know that this is a good spot to grow grapes, and this is the kind of wine that you're going to get. And it's the winemaker's job to guide those grapes and along its path of excellence, and without very much manipulation. And Australia was kind of the polar opposite thought of that, of you know, we can fix anything. If there's a problem with the grapes, we know how to change it and turn it around. And so I kind of take a little bit of those two approaches, and that I believe that wine starts in the vineyard. And if the vineyard is giving you apples, make the best apple pie you can. You're never going to make it taste like lemon meringue. But I also believe that through chemistry and science and all of the learnings and research that we've done along the way, we can guide wines along the right path by being, you know, smart about the barrels we use, the yeast selection, our temperatures, analyzing the chemistry of the wine, so we can make adjustments and changes if we need to, if we see something going awry. So I definitely take both approaches in my winemaking. But I will say that one wine that sticks out in my mind was when I was at Davis in a tasting with a fellow students, blind tasting of 1975 first gross, and they threw in a ringer, and it was a 75 Heights Martha's Vineyard cab, and I picked it as my favorite wine. And I thought, if I could make something like that and it aged so well after 25 years in the bottle, then I'd be in the right career path. So that was a standout for me, for sure.
Well, I think you're well on your way. With this Cade Reserve cab, one of the things I think is really interesting when I was coming up in wine, Hal Mountain was often said, this wine will be good in X amount of years. But this is a new release and it's pretty damn good right now. Am I allowed to say damn? But I also think how on earth can you do both? How can you make a wine that is delicious now and age worthy?
Well, 17, speaking of vintages, was also another powerhouse year, big color, big tannin in 2017. And so we were very quickly figuring out that these wines were going to be massive. So we need to start pressing early, which we kind of talked about earlier. And in 17, we were pressing some of our tanks at day 4. So the earliest I've ever pressed a tank at 24 bricks. So barely started fermenting, and we were already pressing that juice off away from the skins and seeds because we didn't need any more tannin from them. So that's how we were able to make something that was a little bit more balanced in approach. Some got away from us, of course, because with the fires, the laboratories went down for a few days, and as you're tasting, you're kind of went old school and just had to taste the tanks. And we thought, oh, this tastes great. We'll wait a day. And then the next day we came in, oh, this tastes really good. We'll wait another day. And then the next day we're like, oh my gosh, pressed 2 days ago. This is way too big. So we made a few big ones, and then the next lots that came through the winery, we made smaller, meaning we pressed earlier to make a little bit less tannin so that we could blend them together to hopefully, you know, kind of have an overall blend that was more balanced in approach.
We've got a question.
So since Danielle's already on top of it, what did she think of the Cade Reserve Cab 2016 and 17? When do you think they're going to be optimal for drinking their age?
When would you drink 16 and 17 Cade Reserve?
Well, we just released the 17, so obviously it's a little young. I think the reserve wines are in that 10 to 12 year zone of ageability. I think 5 to 8 years too. I don't know. I'm kind of figuring it out with you. Because you know, I started at Cade in 2012, so I haven't tasted my wines that I've made with a lot of age on them. But I think 16 and 17 were both great vintages up on Hell Mountain. They have all of the good stuff in them. I don't see why they wouldn't age well in the cellar, but I also think they're tasting pretty darn good right now.
I would add that the 16 vintage, 16 and 17 are probably two of my favorite Cade vintages. I really think that the new property at 13th Vineyard really just elevated this wine even more than it already was. And it's an incredible wine. And this wine right now, I think is just on fire. It's tasting so good right now. It's just beautiful, and it's silky tannin, but it has great like structure, like a cocoa kind of structure with a little bit of grip and a little drag on the palate. And it's just incredible. And I think it was maybe the highest rated Hell Mountain Cabernet Sauvignon. Is that right?
The next one.
The
Okay,
yeah, the
13th.
next
Yeah,
one.
that was the 13th vineyard.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll get there. I'm ahead of myself.
But
This is
literally,
the second highest rated.
the 13th vineyard literally elevated the wine, right? It's a little bit higher than the original vineyard.
It is a little bit, about 100 to 200 feet at the highest point.
What a gift that vineyard was too. I think about two French guys rolling into Napa Valley in the 1800s. You know, they picked that site. They picked it for a reason, and we're really lucky to have been able to capture it and wrangle it into our wines. Got another question?
This guy it's just a shout out to Jeff. He's drinking the 13 at Estate, absolutely wonderful. And then we want to give a shout out to Tim for wine. It's his birthday tonight, so he chose to open a 2017 adaptation to start, and then a 2014 Odette Estate on deck.
Your birthday.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then, so to
Great
that
choice.
question, Jeff, they want to know, it's a Tuesday night. When you order in pizza at home, what do you drink?
Oh, what am I drinking? Well, it'd be hard to go wrong with the adaptation for sure. That's probably my go-to in-house wine that we have amongst the portfolio. If we are going to mix it up, kind of depending on what the pizza may be, but I love Rhone wines for sure. So any chance that I can get to drink any Rhone wines, I would probably choose the wine first and then figure out how to pair my pizza with that afterwards. So that would be my go-to.
Love it. I'm picking Cade Reserve. Just saying. Good to see you. This is so good, Danielle. I'm blown away by the fact that this is a reserve cab from Hell Mountain that is so balanced.
Yeah, it's
Great
beautiful.
acid, great structure, great fruit. And to me, that's what gives a wine this ageability, is that if it's not balanced upon release, it's not going to come into balance in 20 years. So, wow, I hope that I get to drink this with you in 20 years as well. We have another question. This question will allow us to pour the next wine, Cade at 13th, Aaron, into your glass. What's our
Really sweet.
Deborah wants to know if you can speak to the differences or the uniqueness of the human palate and differences between the capabilities of the palate of different winemakers.
Ooh, I think she's asking if women winemakers are better. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
What she was asking,
Can you run that back?
is there a difference in human palates that would make you a better or worse taster and or winemaker? As I ad-lib that.
It was perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aaron,
Aaron, you're almost
Aaron, would you like to take that?
Well, I'm sure that there is. I'm sure that people have different palates. Well, I know that people have different palates, but as far as what it would do to your ability to be a winemaker, I'm not so certain, because when I started in the wine industry when I was 21 years old, I was really inexperienced in wine. I had very limited exposure to wine, especially fine wines, and I didn't have a vocabulary. I didn't have that kind of just that palate, then the aromatic kind of library in my mind, and the palate and everything. So I actually developed that, and I learned how to taste when I started in the winemaking program at UC Davis. By then I was 25. I had done some internships in between, and I was with as a master's degree, and I was learning alongside people that had grown up in the wine industry. Their parents were winemakers. Their parents owned wineries, on the other end, some of them were doing second careers, and they had discovered wine and then left their jobs and went back to learn how to make wine. And so I was, it was kind of a unique position where I wasn't terribly experienced with wine. And so I saw these people that had these these amazing palates, and they knew a lot about wine. They were very confident in their abilities. And I was still learning and still developing, and I just did a lot of listening. It was very involved in the tastings that we did. We did a lot of tastings outside of class. And I would join those tastings, and I would taste alongside, and I would listen to what people had to say about the wines. And basically it was calibrating my my palate and my nose, and learning how to taste and how to smell. And initially I thought there's no way I'm gonna be able to be a winemaker, because these people know so much and I know so little. But I just kept tasting, doing focused tastings, and learned wine, and learned how to taste wine, and learned how to appreciate different styles of wines. And and so I don't think that it's necessary. Like, obviously people have different palates. Us three as winemakers would probably make a different Plum Jack, Cabernet Sauvignon, or a Det, or a Cade if each of us was in charge, because we were making those decisions based on what we're tasting. But I think that it's probably also very likely that anybody can do it if that's what they wanted to do, and really focused on it and learned it.
Well, Aaron, I think it's going to work out for you long term
Thank you.
as a winemaker. I couldn't be more proud to have you on our team and to call you friend. And one of the coolest conversations that I recall having with you is that the best winemakers in the world know when to step back, know when to not do that one more thing, to really allow the wine to shine. And I think that's one of your great skill sets, is kind of taking the ego out of it, and allowing, and Jeff, you use the word energy a lot, allowing the energy of that wine to shine. And I believe that's what the three of you all do so well. We have another question.
All the wines from the Plum Jack group as a whole are great. Is there any level of competition among the three of you?
Nope. Next question. I'm kidding. Is there? I don't really feel like there is. Do you guys think so?
I don't think there's a true competition. No, I think that more than anything, we're collaborative. I appreciate having basically like two consulting winemakers on the team, where I can talk to Jeff or Danielle and ask questions. And if I have any issues, they're always willing to help. So, and to give their input.
What about you, Jeff? Do you feel competitive with these winemakers?
No, I love the fact that we're all on the same page, striving for the same goal. And I want them to make the best wines, because I'm going to get to drink those. So it's got to be great.
How about you, Danielle?
Yeah, I mean, I think the beauty of it is that even if I wanted to make Cade taste like Plum Jack or Cade taste like Odette, I can't, because it's all about where the grapes are grown, and all of our properties are very unique. And we don't want them to all taste the same anyway. We want them to be different and celebrate those differences. And so, wine is a very personal experience because somebody could love your wine and then somebody else could totally hate it, and that's okay because it's your palate. It's what you like and dislike. I just hope that you like what I like because that's bottle.
That's right. Yeah, and back to the question of palate and person, I even think that one person's palate changes and it depends, are you having a good day? Sometimes things taste better because you had a great morning. Yeah. You had a wonderful conversation or you're with someone that you really loved. Wine tastes better in situations like that.
Absolutely.
So Danielle, this brand new wine that's called Cade at 13th. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So, like I said, we bought this property in 2016, and I thought the wine was just so exceptional and a standout that we had to bottle a small amount on its own, just to highlight this unique property and all of the treasures that are within it. So we do just 150 cases of it. It is solely from the 13th Vineyard, but I've selected the best picks, the best blocks, what I think is the best representation of that property. And the 2017 13th Vineyard Cabernet Sauvignon has some Malbec in it. With the Malbec off of this property is excellent. It is to die for. I wish we could bottle a little bit of it on its own, but instead we put it into the reserve blend, and I think it just adds another layer of complexity and aromatics and texture to this wine. So we literally tasted the whole cellar. I picked out individual barrels within certain lots to blend together, and at 150 cases, this is I think barrels that we selected out of the cellar to bottle under its own label. So very special, unique, and limited availability wine. But
Danielle, it can't possibly be good because it comes with a screw cap.
Well, yes, we bottled half of the production under cork, half under screw cap. Because that is what we do with all of our reserve wines for Cade, Plumpjack, and Odette. And we're still continuing this kind of grand experiment on closures. So why not do it with the 13th Vineyard? And we also wanted to give a little nod to our ownership, Gordon Getty. Thank you, Sandra, for showing that. So the G on top of the screw cap is actually for Gordon Getty, who, when we proposed buying this property in 2016, we were in negotiations with the owners for a good 4 or 5 months, and kind of came down to the wire, and we said, Gordon, what do you think? And he said, I trust you. If you guys think this is the right decision, then I trust you. And enabled us to buy this really spectacular property and have it be part of our portfolio. And I'm the lucky one that gets to reap the benefits of that, I guess. So.
One of the stories that our boss, we share the same boss, John Conover, who's Gordon and Gavin's partner, tells the story that when we bought Cade originally, that he wanted to name it the Getty Estate, in honor Gordon, and it'd be easier to sell a wine called Getty where the name's been heard of before versus a brand new winery called Cade. And Gordon told John, no, it's not about me. It's about all the people involved in this winery. And I don't want a shrine to myself. I really want it to be about the people. But I think at the end of the day, after the support that we've received from him, and he's so gracious and happy about what you three are doing, that we wanted to honor him back. even though he didn't want us to, by at least putting the G on the capsule of this very limited release. So when you're having trivia night and you're opening your Cape 13, ask the question. You'll know the answer. Do we have any other questions from?
We do. We have many people that cannot wait to come visit us again.
Ah.
And
Can't wait either.
I don't know if you have any tidbits or inklings about when that could potentially be the case.
Oh, so, well, we have a lot of people who want that are missing us, probably not as much as we're missing them, that want to know if we have any ideas about when they might be able to visit again.
We don't know for sure yet. It's not necessarily up to us, so we're waiting. But we are hopeful that it will happen soon, within the next month or so. And so we are preparing the wineries to reopen. So we're doing a lot of work we're beginning a lot of work now in the tasting rooms and just on the properties in general to just get them ready for reopening.
Our priority is you guys and keeping everybody safe, making sure that we are capable of doing that. And we're going to follow the guidelines of our governor, who's also our owner. But really, really it's about trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
But rest assured, the wine will be made. We are still making the wine. We just can't have people come to the winery to taste it.
And we can't wait to have you come and visit. And Danielle talked a lot about Cape 13th today. That is a place that you can also visit. And it's pretty neat to see the juxtaposition between our lead gold winery at Cade, the original Cade, with the 13th bonded winery in California with its gravity setup and original thought processes. So it's neat to see those too. If you come out, we'd love to have you. We miss you guys in our tasting rooms. As I say all the time, we don't get to do this without you. It's probably a four-way street, right, guys? The growers, the owners, the growers, the winemakers, and the wine drinkers. We're in this together.
And there's some sales people in there somewhere too.
Just bringing the wine to the people. Any other questions? You guys want to throw out any other stories or thoughts to?
No, I do want to mention that we're focusing on these wines tonight, but we also have soon. I know you missed an entire vintage of 2017 Merlot and Syrah, and a lot of people really miss those wines. And we've been getting a lot of questions about Merlot and Syrah, when that will be available. And we just bottled the 2018 Syrah and the 2018 Merlot this past month. And those will be available soon. So kind of look out for those and be ready for those to be released.
And while I'm no critic officially, we had to taste those for you guys last weekend in a social distancing lunch meeting, and they're really good. You won't be disappointed. They'll be coming your way in a month or two. How about you, Danielle? Any last thoughts or tidbits before we wrap this up?
Well, I just hope for everyone that 2020 brings a great year of good wine and grapes. We are all looking forward to, kind of getting back to a new normal and seeing you at our wineries, but the grapes are going to keep growing whether we have this going on or not. So, we're working hard to make sure everything is going as it should, getting the wine in the bottle, growing grapes out there, and hopefully we'll have a fantastic 2020 harvest.
And Jeff, I was going to say our oldest employee, but that's probably not right. Our winemaker,
most tenured, yeah.
Our winemaker who's been with us the longest. How about you? You have anything else to add?
Yeah, we're trucking along here. Winemaking hasn't stopped, and we're doing our thing. We're gonna have the wines ready for everybody. We're looking forward to having you all come back and visit us. So we definitely miss that component, but
Yes,
we're working hard in the meantime.
Yes, we do. I agree. Well, I'll raise my glass and say cheers, y'all. Appreciate having you with us today.
Yep.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye. Which one? Red? Bye.